Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're on chapter 45, verse 27. And it says in the pasuk that the brothers relayed to Yaakov everything Yosef told them in Egypt. And we kind of left off yesterday with the big question, what do we mean when we say everything? Did they tell Yaakov about the sale? Did they not tell Yaakov about the sale? So Ramban on pasuk Chav Zayin, by Dabrei Lovas Kol Divrei Yosef, Yeroy Li Al Derech Hapshat, Shlo Hugad Yaakov Kol Yamav, Ki Echav Machras Yosef. The Ramban says that he thinks that Yaakov was never told his entire life that the brothers sold Yosef. He thought that Yosef going out to the field and been wandering, got lost. And the people who found him, who grabbed him, Mitzrayim, and sold him to Egypt, that he had been seized out in the field and sold as a slave. In other words, it's clear that he got sold as a slave. It's clear that he ended up in Egypt. So how did he get sold as a slave in the first place? I can assume he got lost, he got taken. Because the brothers never wanted to tell Yaakov what they did. Maybe he'll curse us. And that's not a crazy fear, said the Ramban, because he does express some type of curse or harshness at the end of his life. We'll see that he does express things towards his sons who sinned against him in one way or another. Okay, so that explains why the brothers didn't tell the story. What about Yosef? Yosef didn't feel it was the menschlich thing to do. Why should he tell his father what happened? Why does he need to tell his father what happened? It's terrible lashon hara. The Ramban says if you understand the story in this way, then you can understand l'kach nemar, and that's why it says in the pasuk, "Vayitzavua Yosef lemor, avicha tziva lifnei moso lemor." There's an amazing pasuk in next week's parsha that the brothers come and they tell Yosef, your father told us to tell you after he died that you should be nice to us. If Yaakov So the Ramban says, just imagine for yourself that Yaakov actually knew the story. And Yaakov knew that there'd be very good reason for Yosef to harbor a grudge towards the brothers that maybe would be exacted upon them once their father died. So if Yaakov knew the story, and Yaakov was concerned about what Yosef would do to the brothers once he was out of the picture, what do you think he would have done? Do you think he would have spoken to Yosef himself, or asked the brothers, tell Yosef in my name that he should be nice to you all? Which one would you have done? So the Ramban says, why in the world would the brothers have to fabricate this? It must be, says the Ramban, that Yaakov never knew about this, and the brothers were very scared, and so scared that they were dishonest with him about what their father allegedly said. Very, very interesting to think about. I mean, if you go with this pshat, I think the most remarkable thing in the pshat is that Yosef didn't say a word the whole time. Even after they were together in Egypt, it's a remarkable thing. Okay, chapter 46, verse 2. Actually, let's start with chapter 45, verse 28. So Yaakov believes it now. Vayomer Yisrael Rav Od Yosef B'ni Choy. This is a remarkable. My son Yosef is still alive. I want to go see him before I die. Okay, and now, no, I want to see him before I die. What does that sound like? Does that sound like I want to move to Egypt? Or does that sound like I'll go down, I'll say Shalom Aleichem, I'll give him a hug, we'll schmooze a little bit, and then I'll go back home? It doesn't sound like I'm moving to Egypt. And now, chapter 46, verse 2. Vayomer Elokim Yisrael b'maros halayla. God said to Yisrael in a vision of the night, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov. And he said to him, Yaakov, Yaakov, Vayomer Hineni. And Yaakov said, here I am. Verse 3, Vayomer Anochi Hokel Elokei Avicha. Hashem says to Yaakov, I am the God of your father. Al tira mirdam Mitzrayma. Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. Ki l'goy gadol asim chasham. I'll make you a great nation there. You're going. You're going to Egypt. That's the message that God conveys to Yaakov. What of course is bizarre is, why does Hashem refer to him as Yaakov? The narration of the pasuk has it as Yisrael. And God has changed his name from Yaakov to Yisrael. Ramban on pasuk Beis, Vayomer Yaakov Yaakov. Acher she'omer lo Hashem lo yikarei shimcha od Yaakov ki Yisrael yashamecha hayaroi shikrenu b'shem anich barahu. I mean, God gave him a name change. God said to him, your new name is Israel. You would think that God would have referred him by the name that he gave him. Avokro Yaakov Yaakov Lirmos ki ata lo yasor melokim v'man Hashem v'yuchol avoyiya b'veis avodim ad she'alenu gam alo. Why is his name Israel? The reason his name is Israel is because he has overcome. He's overcome all these different opponents. He's not going to do overcoming now. And ultimately, his descendants will end up in slavery in Egypt. This is the beginning of the exile right now. And so the name Israel is not appropriate for this moment. The name Yaakov is appropriate. In a few psukim from now, there'll be a very interesting pasuk. These are the names of the sons of Yisrael coming down to Egypt, Yaakov and his sons. Ki b'shem b'nei Yisrael yavau shama. They went down as the b'nei Yisrael. Ki yifru abanim v'yirbu v'yigdal shma m'chvoda. Because they're coming down as a prominent group, and they're going to become greater in number, and they're going to take a significant place in Egypt. Avo Yaakov hu ata b'ridato sham. So the family is the b'nei Yisrael, because the family, things are going great for the family. But as a person, he's Yaakov right now, because he knows this is the beginning of a very dark period of his whole nation's life, and it's going to begin now. So they're Bnei Yisrael as a group, and he's Yaakov. It's an interesting thing to think about. And an interesting message that life carries with it its ups and its downs. And we need to be the people that we need to be and live the way we need to live in both modes. Moving on to verse 15. So we talk about the family going down to Egypt, and we name everybody. And now it says in verse 15, Eila b'nei Leah, Asher Yodali Yaakov b'Fadan Aram v'Yesti Navito. These are the children of Leah who were born to Yaakov in Padan Aram, and Dinah his daughter. Kol nefesh banav uvnosav shloshim v'shalosh. They were 33. And the question here is a very obvious question for people who do their homework, and a very famous question. If you count the names, it's only 32 people. So why referring to 33 people in Leah's branch of the family? So Ramban on Pasuk Tesvav, Shloshim v'Shalosh. He starts by citing Rashi, or starts citing the same measures that Rashi cites. When you add them up, they're only 32. Number 33 is Yocheved, who is born as they're entering the city. She is referred to later in the Chumash as the woman who was born to Levi in Egypt, meaning she was born in Egypt, but she wasn't conceived in Egypt. She was conceived in Israel, and she was born as they came into Egypt. Zu he shitas Rabbi saying, this is what the Gemara says, that's how the number discrepancy is addressed. Famous answer. Rabbi Avram Heshiv, the Eben Ezra responds to Tzvi and he says, Kizatema. This is a very difficult thing to understand. Okay. Lamalo Hizkara Kasava Pela Shanasa Ima. This is pretty impressive. If Yocheved's born as they enter Egypt, this is an amazing story. Why? Shaholida Moshe, Vibasmeo Shloshim Shana. Here's the math. Yocheved is the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's explicit in the Torah. Statement number 1. Statement number 2, Moshe Rabbeinu is 80 years old when the Jewish people leave Egypt. That's explicit in the Torah. Fine. Statement number 3 is also quite clear in the Torah. The Jewish people spent 210 years in Egypt. Now, the Gemara says, what the Gemara says is not explicit in the Chumash, but the Gemara says that Yocheved is born as they enter Egypt, which means, if you do the math, Yocheved was 130 years old when she gave birth to her son Moshe. And the Torah makes no mention of that. We only figured that out because we did the math. If we wouldn't have done the math, we wouldn't have known. How old was Sarah when she gave birth to Yitzchak? 90. How do you know that? Because the Torah tells us she was 90. Because the Torah wants us to know this great miracle that occurred, that Sarah was 90 years old when she gave birth to Yitzchak. And according to this Gemara, Sarah's pretty good, but Yocheved's even more impressive. 40 years older when she gave birth to Moshe. And the Torah doesn't make a big deal about it at all. Below Dailon is at Sarah, so I patonim piyutim biyom simchas Torah, Yocheved imi acharei hisnachami b'nihi bas masayim v'chamishim shana. He gets upset because there's a piyut that people say in simchas Torah that according to this would mean that Yocheved was 150 years old, 250 years old, etc. This is the difficulty that the Ibn Ezra raises on this Gemara. Says the Ramban, skipping about 2 lines. The Ramban says, I need to respond to what the Ibn Ezra says. But Omar, and I need to say, the Ramban says, look, however you slice it, there's a miracle here somewhere along the lines with Yocheved. Kihi bas Levi atzmo lo miseches elav moshkos v'sheyodo so Levi Mitzrayim v'yod kasuv es Yocheved dodaso. It says in the pasuk, we actually referred to this pasuk earlier in this Ramban, that Yocheved was born to Levi in Egypt, which sounds like Yocheved was Levi's daughter. And there's another pasuk that talks about Yocheved being Moshe's aunt. So it really sounds like Yocheved is Levi's daughter. So here's the problem, says the Ramban. It's not just a problem with this medrash. We're only spanning 3 generations from Levi until Moshe. And Moshe is 80 years old when they leave Egypt. And Yocheved is the person in between. So the Ramban says, so you know something, Ibn Ezra? You want it to be that Yocheved was born later. You want it to be that she wasn't 130 years old when she gave birth to Moshe. You want that? Fine. So what do you want her to be? You want her to be 100? You want her to be 90? What are you bidding? Because first of all, she's still going to be pretty old when she gives birth to Moshe. And the younger you make her when she gives birth to Moshe, all that means is that her parents were much older when they gave birth to her, if everyone is following me. So there's not enough blanket to cover the bed unless there's some miracle somewhere here. The Im Nomar, and if we, okay, so maybe we'll hold out. I'll try to figure out where to pick up in this Ramban tomorrow. But the Ibn Ezra's question on the Gemara is compelling, but the Ramban's response to the Ibn Ezra is also compelling. So we discussed this morning the Ramban's perspective on what Yaakov didn't know about the story for the rest of his life. We discussed the Ramban regarding why Hashem is referring to him as Yaakov before he goes down to Egypt. We discussed this question about Yocheved.